Okay, moving on to my top 10. The top 10 Batman the Animated Series episodes. These are my 10. These are my best. These are my favoritist. These are my favoritist ones that I love the most and that I have loved for quite a long time now. And my love for these episodes is so aided by my love for Kevin Conroy as Batman. Number 10, On Leather Wings. This episode is arguably one of the simplest, if not the simplest, of all the episodes on this list. It, again, not very complicated story at all. Not a ton of plot lines. It's really an investigation, essentially, at first. Which then turns into combat and turns into a big fight. But this episode is actually the beginning of Batman the Animated Series. This is the very first episode of it. When you, if you, buy it on Amazon or buy it on, one of those streaming platforms, this is episode 1, the first one you'll see in the lineup. But however, this was actually not the first episode to have aired on television. The first episode to have aired on television of this series was Cat in the Claw. But I am a firm believer that On Leather Wings is actually should be the first episode of the series and the first one that people watch when they go into Batman the Animated Series, because this episode does a perfect job of showcasing the series in a nutshell. It starts out with this mystery, this intrigue that you don't really know exactly what's going on. You see Batman doing his detective work, investigating, using his status as Bruce Wayne to find out information about the monster that has been plaguing the city for a while, until you come to the climax where Batman figures it out and then has to fight this monster who turns out to just be this scientist who has gone nuts, Dr. Kirk Langstrom. It also establishes the detective Harvey Bullock's severe disdain for Batman. It also establishes Commissioner Gordon's nobility and that he stands up for Batman and what Batman does. And it also even has this one little scene that introduces Harvey Dent. Because, Harvey's, talking with Bullock, and he's like, well, if you catch Batman, I'll put him in jail for you. It's just this cool little scene that introduces him, and he's flipping his coin, which is immediate foreshadowing. It's like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. You just have these little scenes in there just to see Harvey Dent, be Harvey Dent, be the nice district attorney, but you already have these Easter eggs planted that, foreshadow Two-Face. But again, this episode, it has all the things. And again, because of the simple story that was chosen, because of the simple plot line, it has a lot of time to just shine on the aesthetic of it all. It's like, just the look of this episode especially, is like the way they go about drawing certain things and how they visualize certain things. It's just so cool. And it has that fear factor. Like, I remember when I was a kid, the beginning of this episode, you see this, bat creature swoop by this blimp, and they don't know what's going on. The guys in the blimp don't. And then you see the shadow of this creature flying past the buildings. And when I was a kid, I would see that at the beginning, and there was this scary music that was playing because of the amazing orchestral music, which also, elevated this series so much in quality. But seeing, the shadow just come by the buildings, I was scared as a kid. That genuinely freaked me out. And then the next scene, you don't see the monster, but he's attacking this security guard who just heard this weird sound and then went into this room and got attacked by this monster and thrown out a window. It immediately startles you as a child. It's like, wait, that's creepy. What is that thing? What is that flying across? That's scary. So again, it builds a great intrigue and it builds great tension. And again, like I said, you also see the duality of the Batman Bruce Wayne personas. Both of them are investigating things in their own Batman and Bruce Wayne way. And there's this amazing scene where Batman's talking to Alfred in the Batcave, in Kevin Conroy's Batman voice. But once Alfred says there's a phone call from the doctor that's, he's trying to get to help him investigate this monster that they're trying to find, who is Man-Bat, the villain Man-Bat. He takes the call. After just speaking in his Batman voice, he takes the call, and you can just immediately tell the shift. Hey, what's up, Doc? He starts talking in his smooth Bruce Wayne voice. And it was actually Kevin Conroy's idea to differentiate the two. To give Bruce Wayne his own voice and Batman his own voice. And Batman is the real voice of Bruce Wayne. He's the real voice of the character. But the Bruce Wayne voice is the facade that he puts on for the rest of the people to get them to not suspect anything and to go along with, what certain things that Bruce Wayne wants them to do, just because he's that nice, suave, rich billionaire. And so it really was largely Kevin Conroy that influenced the duality of Batman. Like, I'm not sure any iteration of Batman had done a different voice for the two personas ever before. But it was his idea, and it elevated the character of Batman so much more, and it makes perfect sense because they really are two different people. It's just one's fake and one's real. So, again, it just shows Kevin Conroy's talent, his ability to not only just act and say what the writers want him to say, but also think for himself and figure out what is the best thing that this character can do and what would be the best way to act as this character, the best choices to make for the character. So I just think this episode is a great showcase of his talent, and also a great showcase of the intrigue of the series and the different awesome aspects of it, as well as Man-Bat's just an awesome villain. Moving on to number 9, Mad as a Hatter. This episode is essentially like the Two-Face and Clayface episodes, but just one episode. It's not a part 1 and part 2. But arguably, it still does the character study. It might do it better than those 2 episodes. I don't really know, but I think it's the shortened length that actually makes it even more poignant. Because you start out with this guy who it's hilarious because it's yet another showcase of the great things this series did. Was it takes these goofy villains from the comics, like the Mad Hatter. Like, what is that? Like, what is he obsessed? He's obsessed with hats or something like that. Like that's just goofy. And it takes this character that you would never think would make you feel anything, feel any kind of emotion or have any depth in any way, and it gives him this humanity, and it, like this deep humanity, and this relatable humanity in this episode puts it on full display. You start out like with him in this work office because he works at Wayne Industries, making technology for the Wayne Company, and he's obsessed with one of his workers, Alice. He wants her to fall in love with him. He wants to be with her. He wants her and him to be together, and he has these feelings for her, but he doesn't truly believe that he could ever be with her just because he feels she's so beautiful and he's not. And she already has a boyfriend with rugged good looks, and he just doesn't feel he has a chance. But it's the vocal performance that I think is the best part about this episode by Roddy McDowall as the Mad Hatter. I really wish that he could have actually played the Mad Hatter in live action, maybe in one of the Tim Burton films, if they had done like a third Tim Burton version of Batman with Michael Keaton, because he made this character, man. He absolutely made this character. I mean, I don't think any other actor would have worked as well as Roddy McDowall did for this role, because he does. He's this Englishman, so he has this charm about him, and there's these little details. Like, he has this picture of the Mad Hatter from this portrait of like Alice in Wonderland at the table with the March Hare and Alice. And then he says all these quotes from the book of Alice in Wonderland, and it's just these subtle references to the book, like what he's into, that's kind of his inspiration for what he becomes. But the true motivation is his feeling that he's never going to be good enough to actually be with Alice. That he's never going to be good enough for her to actually choose him. So he mind controls her. He ends up using this technology that he's been creating for Wayne to hypnotize her into just being this puppet that he can love all for himself. And it's really sadistic and creepy when you think about it, but it's the way that the episode plays out and the way that it's written, and since it's written mostly from Mad Hatter's perspective, you really feel for the guy at certain points. You really he just wants to be with this girl because he likes her a lot, but he just doesn't feel like he's good enough. And you can tell that he's never felt like he's good enough. Like, his boss constantly demeans him, not Wayne, but this other girl boss. And she constantly demeans him and talks down to him. And you can tell that he just does not feel loved. He does not feel appreciated. He doesn't have anyone in his life to share joy with. And he felt that Alice was the only one, but he also felt that he could never have her. And there's this one moment in the middle of the episode where he like takes her out to this fairy tale land and dresses up as the Mad Hatter and dances with her, and like he mentions the Mock Turtle song. I never read the book, so I'm not aware, but he mentions the Mock Turtle song, and he's like, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? And there's this beautiful scene, this beautifully acted, beautifully written, beautifully drawn in animation scene at the end of the episode, at the very end of the episode, where after Batman has defeated Mad Hatter and saved Alice from him, and he's looking at her hug her boyfriend in relief that, you know, she's not a prisoner anymore, and he sees what he's done. He sees the tragedy that's happened, and he sees that how he went way too far. And he just looks at her, and then his head immediately just goes down, and he's like, could not join the dance. And then it pans to the Mock Turtle with this tear running down his face, and you're like, oh my gosh, that is so good, but it's so bad. Like, it's so well written, but it makes you feel so terrible for that guy. It's like, man, he had no love in his life, and all he wanted was to be with her, but it was his own obsession with that ended up being his downfall in the first place. And so it's that irony, and it's that tragedy, and it's all of those things in one. And it's about this guy who wears a top hat and this blue suit who mind controls people. How does that even work? How does that even happen? It just goes to show the talent of the writers for this. It's a showcase of the brilliance of the people working on the show, the music, the imagery, the writing, the acting. It's just all of that in a nutshell. And it's a perfect character study of a villain and why he became a villain in 22 minutes. Number 8, Beware the Gray Ghost. Now, this one is very important to me because this one was one of my dad's favorite episodes, if not his favorite episode, because Adam West co-stars in this with Kevin Conroy. Like, Kevin Conroy's Batman, and Adam West plays this character, or this actor, in the show who used to play this character called the Gray Ghost in the show, and like little Bruce Wayne would watch the Gray Ghost TV show as a kid, and that's kind of what inspired him when he became Batman, and it inspired the Batcave. And so Adam West plays this actor who can't find any roles anymore since doing the show, and he just, you know, he feels abandoned, and he feels like he's useless, and he feels like, you know, he has nothing left to give the world. And Batman essentially shows him that what he did as playing the character of the Gray Ghost mattered, and that he's not forgotten, that he still has a big fan out there in Batman. And they get to, you know, stop a arson together. But it's such a good idea to pair them together. Like, pair Kevin Conroy as Batman together, and then pair the original Batman with him. It was still such a great use of Adam West in this role as this disgruntled former actor who feels like, you know, his life doesn't have any meaning anymore. But, you know, Batman gives his life, like, he shows that his life still has meaning. And so it makes it single tier. It's the single tier moment. And again, that was like the reason my dad absolutely loved it, was because it was Adam West Batman, which he also loved when he also watched that show as a kid, the Adam West Batman TV show. And it's Kevin Conroy Batman, which is like favorite iteration of Batman, period. So it's just them working together as two different superheroes, as the Gray Ghost and Batman. And it is very hard for me to come to terms with the fact that all the two stars who made that episode phenomenal and put such a mark on Batman are gone, as well as the man who loved their work the most, and my dad, my dad being gone as well. So that is definitely emotional for me. But it makes me love this episode even more of what it represents. And it makes me remember my dad, and it makes me remember them. It makes me remember Kevin and Adam. And it gives me the feels, man. It's a very emotional episode now. And I'm never going to not love it. I'm never going to stop loving it. Number 7, I Am the Night. This episode is so freaking good. It starts off with Batman questioning whether he's made a difference in Gotham. Whether any of his efforts that he's put into all these years, whether they've actually done anything. Like, yeah, he stopped a few crimes and, put down a few gangs, but in the end, the criminals always just keep coming back, and they always just keep running rampant in Gotham and causing more chaos, and he just wonders, like, have I actually done anything to genuinely help the city? And should Batman even still be a thing? And should I even keep going when I feel like all my efforts are in vain? And then Commissioner Gordon gets shot in a bust, or I guess a sting. I'm not really sure what the technical term is for what they were doing, but that Batman had information on, but he didn't know that it was a trap for Gordon. And so Batman feels responsible that Gordon got shot because also, like, he didn't get there in time. And so that makes Batman, that puts his mind in even a worse place. And the reason this episode is so high on the list is because of what it does for Batman. It puts Batman in a state of depression himself, in a state of I'm not good enough. Everything I've done and everything I might do really doesn't matter because evil's just going to keep coming back. And I know we can all relate to that. So many efforts we put in life, so many things we aspire to become, just all of our efforts feel in vain, and we end up feeling trapped in the fact that we're not moving forward at all, that there's no progress being made. And we end up falling in a state kind of similar to Matt Hagen as Clayface. We end up kind of falling into this state of like, well, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing because I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste my effort. And that's almost the state that Batman falls into in this episode after Jim Gordon gets shot. Like, he's in the hospital recovering, but Batman still feels terrible. So that's almost the state that Batman is in. Until Robin kind of inspires him to get back in the fight. And it's, again, I think Kevin Conroy is definitely the main highlight of this episode. So good. There's this moment where right after he just saw Gordon in the hospital recovering, but he's still unconscious, he just ends up going back to the Batcave and just throwing all this technology around and pushing over and throwing all these things. And then Kevin Conroy just lets out this scream that just shakes your bones. And it's just so well acted, and it's just so good. And it's just so well performed. I mean, I can't imagine being in a studio and Andrea Romano would be, doing the voice directing, saying, okay, just let out this scream like you just hate the world and you hate life and you're just done with it all and you're just mad at yourself, and you just let out this scream in front of everyone in this recording studio when you're not actually really upset, and making it as convincing as he did. Because, I mean, wow, you'd have to hear it, but I mean, it is just so, it really just puts it all on the table of how Batman is feeling in that moment. And that right there is why the series is so good. Why it is the best cartoon for me. Because it is so above the cartoons in maturity, in the way it's written, and the music, and the voice acting, the voice directing. Andrea Romano absolutely killed it. In the look of it, it has this higher level of quality that you can tell that the people who made this show loved this show and loved the character and loved each and every one of the characters inside the show. And the episode is also really emotional because Batman discovers that his efforts are not in vain. And there's this moment where Gordon, just after he wakes up from getting shot, he's like, we got to keep fighting. Like, I know I'm old, but maybe if I was younger, like, I always wanted to be a hero like you. And Batman's like, you are a hero, Jim. That's like not single tear, that's like 5,000 tears. And then there's another little moment where Batman, at the very end of the episode, after that whole ordeal happens, he ends up seeing this kid that he saw earlier swindling somebody out of their money. And he goes down and the kid talks to him and he's like, I've been in those shelters before and, heard the rap that I shouldn't steal, shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, and should be this and should be that. But, this time going on, when you sent me there, I actually understood it this time. And I guess I was ready to hear it. I was ready to hear that, I don't have to waste my life doing these bad things, and that I can go home. And that I'm good enough to go home. So I guess I owe it to you, Batman. And it's just that little moment of just giving Batman such gratification that, all of his fears and doubts were wrong. That that Batman does make a difference in this city. And he does make the difference that he knew his parents would want him to make in the world. And seeing Batman smile also is such a rare commodity. And when it happens, it's just so cool to see, and it gives you a joy. Like when Batman smiles, you smile. That's kind of the way it works. And when Batman is joyful, you're joyful in the series. And so, just seeing his reaction to that, even though being gruff and being Batman, it's just cool. Next episode, number 6 on the list, The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne goes to investigate this meditation retreat run by this guy named Professor Hugo Strange. And Professor Hugo Strange discovers that Bruce Wayne is Batman and attempts to sell the information to the highest bidder, which in this case is either Joker, Two-Face, or Penguin. And again, it's a simple episode, but it just showcases how smart Batman is and his street smarts. And it's also, it's fun. Any episode is fun where you get to see multiple villains like team up together or like hang out together trying to stop Batman or do this thing or do that thing. And of course, Joker in this episode gets some hilarious moments. There's one moment where Two-Face comes at Hugo with his fist because they're all mad at him. And Penguin comes at Hugo with his sword. And then Joker just comes at him with some flowers. And that's the kind of Mark Hamill Joker moments that is so stupidly funny. It's like, that is dumb and hilarious. And it's also a great episode because, it proves the resilience of Batman. Even when his identity is figured out, he can still find a way to kind of twist that around for his own benefit. Which is quite impressive because anytime that ever happens to Spider-Man, it usually doesn't go well for him. But the one time it happened to Batman, he was like, you know what? I can use this. So, it's a phenomenal episode. There's not really a lot to say. It's the same thing I've been saying. Phenomenal vocal performances, great, well-written story. And I think it's the simplicity that works so well for it. Like, Hugo Strange is still a great bad guy. He still has this maniacal side to him, and there is a certain moment where you think like, man, he's kind of outsmarted Batman completely. Like, he knows Batman's secret now, and so this might be the end. And then of course, Batman never fails to impress, never fails to win. He just outsmarts him and seizes the day. Next episode, number 5, It's Never Too Late. I tell you, this episode is phenomenal. And let's be honest, I've been saying that with all of these episodes. But that just shows how good the series is. I love almost all of these episodes, each and every one, so much. And at any point in the day, some could be switched around. There could be new ones on the list. Some ones could be taken out. It's really hard to sum up in 20 episodes out of like 80-something episodes how good the series is and which moments are your favorite, because there's so many phenomenal ones. But this episode is no exception to the rule. So it's about this mob boss, Arnold Stromwell, who has been at war with the other mob boss, Rupert Thorne, and his son is missing, and he doesn't know where he is. And Batman, in the midst of Rupert Thorne trying to kill this guy, trying to kill Stromwell, Batman seizes Stromwell, and Stromwell reluctantly agrees to go with Batman to this place where Batman reveals that his son has actually been addicted to the drugs that the mob boss has been selling and manufacturing. And the mob boss didn't know this. Stromwell did not know this. And it gives a mob boss, this guy that otherwise you would have no sympathy for. Like, he sells drugs, he helps make these things, he puts people in danger. He's not likable at all. But it even gives this mob boss some humanity. That his own son was affected by the sins of the father. And it's destroyed this guy's marriage. It's destroyed this guy's relationships with anybody he cares about. Him, the practice that he practices in the first place. And you also get a little bit of his backstory of how Stromwell and his brother, when they were kids, almost got hit by some trains, and his brother saved his life from getting hit by one and lost his leg in the process. But you don't know that till the end of the episode. There's this moment where Batman goes to this church and requests the help of this priest who is there. He calls him Father. He's like, "Father, can you help?" And you don't know really what's going on with that at first. But then at the end of the episode, after all is said and done, and Batman has saved Stromwell from Thorne's men, and all the crap that Stromwell has seen of like his son being affected by his actions, and realizing that everyone has been affected by his actions, the priest is his brother. His brother who saved him from getting hit by the train and lost his leg. And the brother just lays it all on the table for him, like, "Listen, dude, your life is destroyed, but you can still come back. You can still, give up this need to be the best in the town and the owner of the town and nobody's better than you, and making all these drugs and being the mob boss, and just come back to your family." And then just this hardcore mob boss, who again you would have no sympathy for otherwise, just breaks down in tears and hugs his brother. And then Commissioner Gordon comes, and you can hear Stromwell say, I would like to give a statement. I would like to help you guys out with the gang wars and to defeat Rupert Thorne and give you the information I can." And Batman looks down at this, and you can tell he's glad. You could tell that, because it was Batman's efforts that helped Stromwell, get redeemed, come to his senses. So in the process, you can tell that, Batman has a heart. Batman's not cruel, and Batman's not just looking to punch someone just to punch him. And, he genuinely cared that Stromwell would realize the error of his ways and come to his senses. Because Batman was the one who found his lost son in the first place to take him to this rehab center. And it really is a very heavy episode and a very real episode for a kid's cartoon. Which shows that, animated series really isn't a kid's cartoon. Kids can watch it. They're pretty fine for the most part, but it's not really designated just toward children. Children can be entertained by it, especially. I was when I was a kid. But it also can be just as entertaining, and if not more so, for adults. But anyway, at the end of the episode, he looks down at Stromwell, giving the information, and then he looks back at the church. The camera pans over to the church, and then just it closes. And as a Christian, I feel like that's what they were trying to say is, the episode is called "It's Never Too Late," and it's about this horrible person being redeemed of their sins, of the horrible things that they've done, and coming back to love and realizing that he really does care about his family and wants to remedy the ways that he's hurt them. And because of the premise of the episode and because of the way it ends, I really do feel like they were trying to nod to the salvation, to nod to Christ, nod to the saving power of the Bible, especially because his brother was a priest and helped Stromwell back on his feet. So I think that's a really cool nod. I think it just has an air of, just makes you feel good. It's definitely a feel good episode. It's it's heavy, but it ends in this way that just makes you smile on the inside and out. So, and also again, it shows Batman, he has a heart for these things. I feel like he knows. And so it's powerful. Number 4, Nothing to Fear. This episode is the debut of the Scarecrow, and Scarecrow has, this is the first time he infects Batman with fear toxin. But in this case, I think motivated by something that some other guy told Bruce earlier in the episode, he's seeing visions of his father saying that Bruce is a disgrace, and Bruce is not worthy of the family name, and that Bruce has failed his father. And Bruce just is having severe trouble with this. And you can tell he's considering whether or not, these visions that he's seeing, whether or not they're right, whether or not maybe he is a disgrace. And there's this moment where Alfred just puts his hand on Bruce's shoulder and he's like, That's rubbish. He's like, that's rubbish. I know your father will be proud of you because I'm so proud of you. Again, those emotional moments come from a Batman show. It's just, you feel every single emotion that they're trying to convey, and especially since I lost my dad, that moment is very resonant with me. Alfred is the surrogate father to Bruce Wayne, and he always has been, and he always will be, so seeing that father-son moment between the two of them, concerning the fact that Bruce feels he might be a disgrace to his actual father, and with Alfred encouraging him as his surrogate father, is just so, again, so powerful. And the ending of this episode is the moment. Probably might be my favorite moment in all of the animated series, which is definitely saying something because I have a Fithillian. But I truly don't believe that there are many other moments more poignant than the ending of this one, where he's hanging off this blimp and he's affected by the fear toxin, and he's starting to see these visions of his dad's, again, just telling him, like, you're a disgrace, you're nothing, you're an insult to me. And Batman just is like, no, you are not my father. I am not a disgrace. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. And then the music swells up, and then the vision just disappears. And that's the end of it. And he has conquered his fears, and he has accepted that he is the Knight, and that he is Batman, and that he is not what these evil visions say he is. Boy, is that relatable. Boy, is that resonant. Take it from anyone's perspective. Somebody bringing you down. Somebody constantly talking, demeaning you, and saying that you'll never be anything in life. And just letting that person have it. And telling them what's really true. That you are not a disgrace. That your life does have value. And what you do is meaningful. And specifically, I think for me, there's this common belief, I guess, that God is evil. That God is cruel. And that God is just out to get you anytime you ever make a remote amount of a mistake. Which is not true. That's Satan. Satan is the one condemning you, not God. God loves you, God cares about you, God wants what's best for you. He's slow to anger. But many people believe that what Satan does is what God does, that God is the Satan when he's actually not. And so specifically when Batman says to the Vision, like, you are not my father, I am not a disgrace, that is resonant for me, because times as a Christian where I think that God is condemning me, that God has chosen not to believe in me anymore, and that God has chosen to give up on me, you know, I can be reminded of that scene in this series, in this Batman the Animated Series, where he says, no, you're not my father. My father's God. You're Satan. I'm not a disgrace. I'm not what you say I am. I'm what my father says I am. And my father says that I'm worthy to be his son. That is beautiful. Inspiring does not even come close to describing how that makes me feel. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important the entertainment industry is, and how important these shows are. And if these shows can deliver lessons like that, if you really think about it and dig deeper into it, that's a triumph. That is a most excellent triumph. And I wish more shows did that these days. But the lesson that teaches is very profound. And I appreciate them for putting that in there. And yeah, it's awesome. Next episode, Perchance to Dream. This is actually Kevin Conroy's favorite episode. This was his number one of the animated series episodes. I think Phantasm was his favorite project overall. I could be wrong about that, but I didn't know for a fact that Perchance to Dream was his favorite episode, period. And it is very easy to see why. It's not one of those like, wait, that's your favorite? Seriously? That's a weird choice. Like, no, everybody gets it when he says that. Like, oh yeah, no, that's one of the best episodes, if not the best. Bruce Wayne is trapped in this dream world where he has everything he wants. Selina Kyle is his fiancée. He has his parents back. He's not Batman. Somebody else is Batman. He's living his dream life, his perfect life, the perfect life that he has wanted for so long, where he doesn't have to be a crime fighter. He doesn't have to go out every night and punch people's faces and stop the evil in the city. That he can just be him, that he can just be Bruce Wayne and have his own life without Batman. He looks at this newspaper and realizes he can't read it. And then he opens a book and realizes he can't read that one either. And he tries it with a bunch of other books and he can't read them. And that's what gives him the main clue of him being like, oh yeah, this world isn't real. And, you know, he's been given everything he ever wanted. But he knows it's not real, so he ain't having it. So he goes to this tower that he knows is part of Batman's nightly patrols, his own nightly patrols. And he waits for Batman to come. He waits for this other guy, mystery guy, who's apparently Batman in this dream world to come to him. And when he does, he reveals that, like, I knew I was in a dream because you can't read things inside a dream. And I know that it's your fault, that you are the cause of this, that this other Batman is somehow the missing link, that he's the cause of all of him being in the dream world. And he pulls off his cowl, and it's the Mad Hatter. And the Mad Hatter, you know, explains to him that you are trapped in this own wonderland that I've created for you, where you have everything you ever wanted, and it's all fine, and you can go back to your fiance, and you can go back to your family and spend life with them. And Bruce is just like, it's not real. I can't do that. It's not real. And again, you see in this episode Batman's commitment, that he's on mission, always on mission, even when he's been handed everything that he ever wanted. It's the ultimate temptation. It's like, here is all of what you've wanted. Here's everything you've desired. Here's the love of your parents you've desired to have as an adult. And here's the love of a woman that you truly care about in a normal life, and not a life with costumes and masks and beating people up. Here's all of it in a nutshell. Here you go. The villain has given it to you. And he's like, nope. Ain't real. I don't want it. I want the real life. Even if it's not my favorite life, it's still my life, and I want that one instead. I need that one. Finds a way to get out of the dream, and once Batman's waking up, he's like strapped to this like table, and he's hooked up to this, like, Mad Hatter calls it the dream machine, and he like beats all the henchmen up, and he just really angrily asks Mad Hatter, why? And Mad Hatter, again, perfect acting, phenomenal acting by Roddy McDowall, he sheds a tear, and he's like, you of all people have the gall to ask me that. You ruined my life. I gave you everything you could ever dream of in this own life for you, just to keep you out of mine. And he collapses on the floor in mourning, and you just see, as if you didn't in his own, you know, origin episode, wow, this guy is messed up. He has some severe mental issues, but you can tell it's this genuine pain, that he truly believes that Batman is why Mad Hatter fell from grace. And like, Batman's so mad at him because it's like, you taunted me with everything I've wanted all my life, and it wasn't ever real. Like, how could you do this to me? And Mad Hatter was that obsessed with getting Batman out of his life, and in a different world, essentially, just because he was so angry with him and bitter towards him, because he genuinely thought that somehow Batman was the reason for Mad Hatter's downfall. And I think the most grounded part about that is that there are real people like that out there, who genuinely can't bear the thought that they're the ones who made the mistake, and that they're the ones who were in the wrong, that they just have to blame it on someone else, that they are so desperate to make someone else pay, or just end someone else's life, because they feel that they're the main enemy. They're the ones who caused their life to be destroyed. And yeah, there are some real people like that out there, and it's really sad, but it's even more sad when you realize what Batman was taunted with. And then Gordon asks him what the dream machine is, like, what is this? And then Batman's like, the stuff that dreams are made of. This That one is like again another heavy one, but again it just shows you Batman's commitment. Even if this world is everything I want, I could never enjoy it because I know it's not real. So I'm out. Peace. Number 2, and this one's very important to me. I honestly probably like number 2 and number 1 are so close. They are insanely close. It was difficult for me to rank, but I did. Number 2 is Heart of Ice. Mr. Freeze is my favorite DC character. As much as I love Batman, I think just out of pure nostalgia, like I remember seeing Mr. Freeze for the first time in this episode, or one of the first times, and I just was mesmerized by how cool he was, how cool he looked, his voice. I was like, that is my character. Mr. Freeze is my guy, and so he's been my guy ever since. But it's not just that. It's the complete reworking of his character from the comics. It's very similar to the Mad Hatter, the way they reworked his character. Paul Dini completely overhauls his story and gives Freeze this insanely compelling and insanely sympathetic origin to where you almost are rooting for him in the episode. Like, you know you shouldn't be, but you sort of are. Like, part of you is. Like, that more rough part of you is like, I kind of want Freeze to win. And that's impressive when you can do that for a bad guy. But it was really just the addition of Nora to his story, and how Nora is that part of him that is good. Nora is that part of him that he aspires to be, and that he truly wants to be, but is buried beneath the cold of the bitterness that people have shown him over the years, and how horribly they've treated him. And she was the only good thing in his life, and him trying to save her only led to his downfall and becoming Mr. Freeze in the first place because of the evil of his boss. Like, it was solely his boss's fault that Freeze became Freeze. Ferris Boyle, also voiced by Mark Hamill, and it was that addition of that backstory, and also Batman's sympathy for it. He genuinely apologizes to Freeze once he's realized, I'm so sorry about your wife. That's terrible. And even he gets it. But he knows that vengeance is not the way. That all of Freeze's efforts to try to get revenge on his boss, Ferris Boyle, and try to kill him in the end and destroy everything he's worked toward, is not the way. Is not the right thing to do. And Batman fights for justice and Freeze fights for vengeance, and I think they are actually a perfect mirror image of each other in this episode, as both of their lives were ruined by this one man, and either of them had the choice to either embrace the bitterness and the pain and become that man, or take that pain and use it for something more, and use it for something brighter. Freeze chose to use his pain for vengeance. Batman chose to use his pain for justice, which is flat out stated at the end of this episode, where Freeze is lost and he's like, he can't end this way. I want vengeance. And Batman's like, no, justice. And he hands this news lady these incriminating videotapes of showing how Ferris Boyle ruined Freeze's life and caused Victor Freeze to become Mr. Freeze. It is a perfectly written villain story, and Batman has the perfect reaction to it as the good guy, as the protagonist. You really know who's right in the end. There's that little bit of you that wants to root for Freeze, but in the end you're like, you know what? He's right. Justice. Not vengeance, but justice. Before I move on to number 1, some honorable mentions. Bane, the episode called Bane. I love that episode, surely for the reason Bane is the main villain. Bane is in it. Bane is my second favorite DC character, just because of how awesome he is, and I love the idea of the venom tubes and all that. It's just cool. I like strong guys, so Bane is awesome. Also, Clock King. I feel like that one's kind of an underrated episode because it's also a character study of a villain, but the lesser known villain, which is probably why it's underrated. But it shows how one man's obsession with time and having everything done right on time and his perfectly scheduled life, when you throw that out of whack, it just messes up his soul's psyche. And it's amazing to think that there are people out there who actually exist, that like that, who actually exist. That's so nuts. And then last honorable mention is Christmas with the Joker. That episode is just sheerly fun. It's just sheerly fun. It's the idea of Joker doing this Christmas special, taunting Batman and telling Batman which places to go to lead him eventually to rescue these hostages that Joker has captured. Batman and Robin both. And they end up having to save a train. They end up having to stop a giant gun. It's like the unpredictability of Joker is on full display in this episode. It's just Mark Hamill's performance is, it's perfect. And hearing him sing Jingle Bells Batman Smells is also hilarious. And it's a phenomenal episode. And it's Christmas, so what more could you ask for? But number one, my numero uno, what is the best Batman animated series episode in my mind? Almost got him. This episode is about as likable as it gets. Because it's Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Poison Ivy, and supposedly Killer Croc discussing their different encounters with Batman and how they almost got him. And hearing them tell each one of their stories from their own perspective just has this sense of intrigue. It's very neat to get to understand, like, what is their perspective on when they get beaten by Batman? Like, how do they see things when it happens? Because of how they recount the story and their flashbacks, you each get these individual mini Batman stories about how he fought each one of the villains. And I think at the end of the day, one of the best parts about this episode is all the villains are reminiscing about how Batman has beaten them, how Batman has triumphed, how Batman got out of like the best trap they could think of and escaped and somehow survived and somehow still won. And you can tell that they're still kind of confused by it. They never actually figure out, like, how does Batman do it? How does he always win? How does he always figure out a way to counteract our strategies, tactics, and attacks? Like, what is his secret? And that is just another phenomenal idea for an episode. It's like, what if some of Batman's villains played some poker, had to get together and played some poker around the table and talked about how they each got their butts beat by Batman and still can't understand it? That's a phenomenal idea for an episode, because you have just this great banter between the villains and just that, like, dialogue, and like Joker's always so charismatic even though of how evil he is. Each one of them has their own charisma. And the best part about the episode is the whole time they've been talking about how Batman has beaten them, and Joker's the only one who's like, he's not beating me. I got the ace in the hole. I got Catwoman as a hostage, and I'm gonna kill Batman's favorite kitten. And then Killer Croc gets up from the table and is like, I don't think so. Tosses the Joker aside. Killer Croc is Batman. Batman's been in disguise as Killer Croc the whole time. Just to get information about where Catwoman was that entire time. So not only did you get to hear all the villains discuss their perspectives on how they each got beat by Batman and discuss their different encounters with him and how they feel about it, then you realize that whole time Batman was in on the conversation. He was hearing all of their stories and all of their perspectives on it. And I would have loved to have known what was Batman thinking during all of that. Like, as he was acting like Killer Croc, as he was being the Master of Disguise, which is an underrated quality of Batman, that he is the Master of Disguise as well. It's one of his great detective skills. But he's hearing all of the villains talk about him and be like, he's hearing all of their bewilderment by the fact that, like, how does he do it? How does he defeat all of us and do it so well with such style? And I guarantee you some part of Batman was like, 'cause I'm Batman. And of course he saves Catwoman at the end of the episode. But even though there are deeper episodes in the series, I think it's the simplicity of this one and the idea of getting multiple of his villains in the series together, discussing the fact that they just can't seem to beat him. Like, bragging about how close they got, but also admitting that they only almost got him. Seeing that, and then seeing Batman just do it again, even, like, in the midst of them talking about it, is just a treat. It is just a treat to see. And I don't know if any other episode I'm not like, that is one of their best ideas, if not their absolute best ideas. So that is my number one. Thank you guys for watching. I will forever miss Kevin Conroy and his acting talent as Batman. And I'm still going to have to be coming to terms with the fact that he's gone, but he will always live on in the animated series, as well as all of the other projects he's done. The Justice League cartoons, Batman Beyond. His essence will forever live on. And he has always been, is always being, and will always be Batman. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And one last thing. Kevin, you are a good man. You are an inspiration. You are the ultimate superhero. You are vengeance. You are the knight. You are Batman. That's a wrap, guys.